winter takes its toll, whether you're willing to pay or not. Know me and fear me. My embrace is for all and is patient but sure. The dead can always find you. My hand is everywhere. There is no door I cannot pass, nor guardian who can withstand me. Chapter 1. Awakening. Winter in Icewind Dale has ever struck me as a boaster, loud, merciless, and convinced of its own indispensability. Icewind Dale, a land of endless brutality, a land that few survive and that fewer have the will to endure. It has snow, ice, and freezing temperatures in abundance, while the sun never rises far above the horizon even at the height of summer. And the height of summer is a fleeting thing. Winter here is long and ruthless. The ice cliffs of the Reghead Glacier rise up in the east like prison walls. The towering snow-capped peaks of the spine of the world loom to the south. To the north and west, the sea of moving ice churns bergs and flows in an endless tumult. Like winter, grinding its teeth in anticipation of its next freezing assault. Between these formidable obstacles lies windswept tundra, dotted with settlements and the occasional small forest or stand of trees. A singular mountain called Kelvin's Cairn rises from the heart of Icewind Dale. During the summer, snow from Kelvin's Cairn flows into 3 mineral-rich lakes, Mare Dualden, Lac Dinneshere, and Redwaters. By midsummer, Icewind Dale shakes off the torpor of winter and comes forth in full flower. Grasses grow 2 or 3 feet high in the span of weeks. Birds flock to the marshes formed by the thawing soil, and reindeer calves fill out the herds that diminished in the winter, or that was before Auril cast her foul grip upon the land. The sun, held down below the horizon by the Frost Maiden's magic, offers no respite from winter's fury. The days are twilight, the nights dark. As Auril casts her nightly spell, a curtain of light weaves across the starry sky to keep the dawn at bay, an aurora that portends an everlasting winter. Storms bring driving hail and sleet that leaves everything coated in a sheath of ice. Snow piles in deep drifts and blocks all trails leading south to warmer lands. Trapped in winter's cold embrace, nomadic humans follow herds of reindeer through their migrations, while others dare the treacherous waters of the sea of moving ice in search of fish, seals, walruses, and whales to sustain them. Dwarves dig into the earth to seek shelter and mine for iron. Meanwhile, folk descended from foolhardy and treasure-mad immigrants eke out meagre lives in 10 towns, which can barely hold back the wind, let alone marauding orcs, giants, and fierce tundra yeti. Despite the unnatural cold and other dangers, people still brave the journey to reach this harsh winterscape, searching for opportunity and adventure. Now, to the matter at hand. I undertake no guide to all things frozen. Volo has already abused that sort of title enough for my next 3 reincarnations. Nor is this some polished, how to survive the Dale without dying. How? I, dear traveller, don't go. Failing that, travel with someone slower than you. What follows is simply the true account of a man who woke in the snow with blood on his arm, a sword at his side, and his name hiding from him like a guilty dog under a table. He bore no stamp of the Reghead tribes, broad in the shoulders, with no crest or animal fur to represent his allegiance. It must have appeared as though he didn't follow any of the tribes. Elk, not a chance. The wolf? Too communal. The bear? Well, perhaps in another lifetime. But nay, he was his own man. At least, that is how it appeared, for now. As he lay bloody and unconscious, his matte black hair blew gently in the frozen breeze, and a scar dragged its knife across the brow. His left arm was tattered with half-frozen blood. Beside him lay a blade, a fashionable and elegant thing, a rune-imbued sword, its steel stitched in giant wrought runes, and a side on runes. One of the eldest languages ever cut into the world of Faerun. For much of their written communication, giants used a modified version of the runic letter forms claimed by the dwarves as their own. This alphabet is used widely today, including by many traditional enemies of the dwarves, such as orcs, giants, and goblinoids. That giants were first in the world, and thus the creators of the script, is a fact that giants take for granted, but which dwarves hotly dispute. Many giants are illiterate or nearly so, particularly hill, frost, and fire giants, which place little value on learning. Instead of writing stories with words, they typically tell their tales with pictograms etched in wood, ice, stone, or even earth, in the case of hill giants. These tale carvings relate legends or the stories of important events or meetings in the manner of highly sophisticated cave paintings. Often, they employ aspects of legends. Strala Jotun, a rune knight, one of the lineages of the Dale that remembers the old bargains with the ancient giants. The sky pressed its twilight thumb upon the land in Aural's stillness of winter. Strala set his good hand to the familiar hilt and began to walk. For there is a wisdom older than maps. Geography is just physics slowed down, with a couple of trees stuck in it. He approached a vast wooded expanse. A snowy owl watched from a stunted spruce. The Dale's omens are often feathered, and if you do not learn that, you will spend your last daylight arguing theology with the wolves of druids. A vision appeared as he saw the owl and passed it. A lodge of dark ice, oval, and long as a whale's back appeared within his consciousness, its arches carved in the old frost runes. 8 figures kept a grim ring, robes stitched with the cowled skull I know too well. A storm giant embodied the elemental winds against a bier of Rime, proud even in death. The chant they raised had no patience for the living. Myrkul's seal was everywhere. Mark me here. He is Lord of the Dead, and Myrkul, known as one of the dark gods, the god of the dead, as opposed to the god of death, which was the province of Pal. This later extended to god of decay. His influence in Faerun was imposed through fear, and he was a master of making mortals terrified of him through his words and deeds. At times, just to remain unpredictable, he seemed almost kind and caring. His cowled skull head was known in nightmares all over Faerun, and he was the one deity that almost all human mortals could picture clearly. Myrkul took care that all mortals thought of him often. He was even known to materialize beside open graves, scheming in hand, just to gaze around at gathering mourners for a few silent seconds before fading away, in order to remind everyone that he was waiting for them all. The second vision appeared, Strala himself, runes upon his blade standing in a gale of bones. Skeletons came on in clattering in dozens of orderly rotations. They bowed towards him as the cultists spoke in a tongue of Undercommon. An aside from the Sage of Shadowdale on this famous language, Undercommon is a trade language, spoken by many creatures in the Underdark. It is a simplified language used for communication between different races like Drow, Duergar, and Svirfneblin, and mayhappen you decide to use it. Well, then bare your throat, as it is often described as sounding guttural and deep. Moments passed, and a lich lifted one unhurried hand, and a corpse, a dark unhurried shape of a deceased storm giant, rose. Its eyes hued into green necromantic reflections. A third vision greeted itself within Strala Jotun's mind, a field drowned in blood as he staggered onwards. Fields of militia lay dead, their armour emblazoned with a sigil of a crown, with tinges of red and white. Overhead, an owl widened its circles, focusing its vision upon Jotun as he trekked northward, slowly collapsing within a vast expanse of snow, his eyes slowly slumbering to a close as the blood slinked and froze into the icy tundra of Icewind Dale. The visions left him. The owl glanced upward and blinked once, as if to say about time, and set off south, toward the spine of the world. He followed, as his memories had escaped his reach. What led me to this madness? What divine sense does this creature have? What could an undead storm giant be used for? All valid questions, but worry not, dear one. One old mage will grant you the foresight you have requested. Behind them, the wind folded their tracks neatly. This reminded me of a maid I once met within the high palace of Silvery Moon. Similar to that tidy display, she paralleled this with her folding of sheets within the perfectible, white marbled walls. A comparison I use rarely, for I have never found a noble's linen that merited such care. Before them lay the Dale's usual landmarks, roads claimed by ice, the 10 towns further northbound along the Eastway. Far beyond their sight, covered ever vaguely, Kelvin's cairn shouldered the sky. Closest of all, the runes on his sword glowed faintly, I would assume waiting for his command. They moved southbound towards the spine of the world, led on by our faithful owl. Another aside from the sage of Shadowdale on the spine of the world. Mountains of ice and black rock form a sky-scraping wall of frigid peaks across the far north, which few creatures have the ability to surmount. Brutally cold winds, avalanches, and icy rifts are the least of a traveller's problems in the spine of the world. Tribes of giants, goblinoids, and orcs dwell there, holding every cavern or abandoned dwarven delve, but those claimed by dragons. You may be asking yourself, what did I see in him? A man set on the hinge between what he was and what the runes would make of him. Memory ode. The owl. Was it Aurel's spy? A divine messenger? A druid's pet? Or simply coincidence? Whatever form it took, it kept to its course. And if you ask me why a creature of feather and frost would shepherd a man covered in blood, I will answer you plainly. The Sword Coast delights in a good tale, or perhaps a simple paradox. Also remember this, dear one. The gods play games between themselves. The world often moves in strange paths, and it chooses its instruments without asking their permission most often. Thus began the matter of Strala Jotun, Rune Knight, Reged-born, whose past had gone to ground and whose future had already found him. If you are the sort who requires a moral before you'll turn the page, here is one fit for Icewind Dale from a famous drow. The reality of existence here in Icewind Dale is harsh indeed, an environment unforgiving, where one mistake will cost you your life. Chapter 2. A Lost Empire. The owl chose the road which continued southward towards a stone causeway thrown like a dare across a gorge of the spine of the world. 40 feet wide, a foot of snow upon it, and sheer drops on either side that would teach even a boastful barbarian humility in one lesson. The path ran to a dome hewn from the mountain, 6 pillars shouldering it. Mind you, the giants built in the old decorative architecture they were famous for in ages past. Each pillar told a sentence of who the world once believed ruled it. A hill giant cocked with a boulder, a frost giant mid-swing, felling a pine, a cloud giant drifting lordly among a council of their kind, a storm giant pondering the pretenses and prophetic states of the past and a future yet to come occur, a stone giant dreaming, their mind enraptured, and a fire giant parading chained dwarves through glow-dark caverns of the Underdark. If you wonder why dwarves will die on their feet before bowing to a Jotun, kindly sit tight for a history of dwarves coming in a later tome. The owl dropped from its high circle to Strala's shoulder, an anointing more than a perch, and the thoughts and knowledge he once held behind his eyes opened like thunder before a storm. All told, the Empire of Ostoria dominated the world for 4 millennia, before its decline began in a genocidal struggle against the dragons that came to be known as the 1,000-Year War. Dragons had lived in and around Ostoria in relative peace since the Empire's foundation. Conflicts between dragons and giants in those days were personal, not tribal or regional, and usually involved bragging rights or hunting territory. Differences were settled by individual contests of might, wits, or skill. That situation persisted for generations until the red dragon Garrix inflamed the greed and envy in its followers by rallying against the giants' prosperity, and they rose up in response. At least that's what most giants believe to have happened. No one really knows any longer what set off the war. But once battle began, the long-standing peace between giants and dragons crumbled everywhere. Foes tore at each other's throats in all parts of Astoria. There were no front lines or safe havens, only endless ambushes, sieges, and atrocities committed against giants and dragons alike. Eventually, none were left alive on either side who had seen the war's beginning. Age and brutality had claimed them all, and the few giants and dragons then alive had spent their entire existence at war. The 1,000-Year War didn't truly end so much as it wasted away through attrition and exhaustion. In the twilight after Astoria's fall, when the world cracked and the glory of giant kind was scattered to the winds, Animal Father, creator of the giants and shaper of mountains, turned his gaze away. Wrathful and wounded, he forsook both their realm and blood, vowing never to return his sight to the world until his children had reclaimed their ancient majesty, until the giants rose once more as sovereigns of creation. From Anim's lineage sprang the Ordning and its divine scions, gods who embody each caste, each calling, each truth within the giant soul. In his silence, the giants endured, and in their endurance, they remembered. Though Anam vanished beyond the veil of the divine, his name is still spoken with reverence, carved into stone, etched in lightning, and carried on the wind. Yet it is not to him alone that they offer glory. All this rushed through Strala as he crossed beneath the dome and into the great hall where frost clung around countless stalactites peeling down from the ceiling. The chamber vaulted 100 feet high. 7 statues ringed its periphery. At the center, an 80-foot robed colossus, arms outstretched, face hidden by a stone cowl, turned toward a glowing arch in the east wall. Along his flanks knelt 6 paragons, hill, stone, frost, fire, cloud, storm, each half the height, arms extended as if returning their scale of power to its source. 5 bore gifts of war. Only the frost giant's hands were empty, which I assume you noticed was not by accident. 2 shapes moved in the periphery. 2 undead frost giants stepped from the rows of statues. Frost-coated beards, cracked lips, eyes burning with a dull necromantic glow. One carried a cleaver of blue-black ice. The other gripped a ridged great axe scarred with old runes. Their footfalls shook the flagstones. Rime flaked from their joints. Jotun set his stance in the open lane between kneeling stone paragons. He counted reach, footing, and exits. The runes along his blade brightened, one after another. The cleaver dropped in a straight vertical cut. The rune knight stepped inside the arc and struck across one of the undead frost giant's wrists. With its tendons split, its grip now faltered. He used this momentary respite and jammed his crossguard under the frost giant cleaver's heel and levered it into the base of a nearby statue. Stone bit the steel of the axe as the weapon stuck. He then sank to a knee and slid on the thin glaze at the center of the floor as the blade passed over him. He cut into the back of the giant's knee at the seam in the greaves. The joint popped. Its weight shifted, and the giant staggered, while planting its footfalls wide to recover. Strala shifted behind a plinth and almost took the impact of the second frost giant's strike. He stepped out from behind the plinth and drove his pommel into the giant's jaw. Momentum, he thought under his breath, as its teeth broke and skittered. The giant reeled and tore its cleaver free in a shower of ice. Both advanced together. Strala narrowed the angle, keeping a statue's shoulder between himself and the axe. He beat the frost giant's cleaver aside, raked the ribs, half-stepped, and drew a wild return cut right into its left ventricle. The runes on his sword formed a tight band of light along the fuller. The axe came down in a two-handed chop, its final attempt while it was bleeding out steadily. He met the haft near the head, bound the line, and forced its weight into the floor, with the frost giant dropped to a knee under the redirected force. Strala climbed 2 steps up the braced haft, pushed off the carved beard of the storm giant statue, and drove his sword point through the nearer giant's eye socket. Resistance, then a break. The necromantic glow went out as the body fell. The floor thudded and settled. 1 to go. The last giant lunged with a shoulder crush. Strala slid along the curve of the pauldron and cut deep into the axillary gap. The swing of the axe faltered. He turned the blade flat, stepped to the rear, and hacked through the atlas at the base of the skull. Blue frost smoke vented from the wound as the body sagged, lifeless, now permanently. Jotun progressed, tired but edged to understand his fate. Beyond, a hexagonal sanctum rose to a spear point at 90 feet. In each of the 6 corners, a giant statue held aloft a heavy iron lantern. Hill, stone, frost, fire, cloud, storm all present like an honor guard. Cold, steady magic lit the room. Upon the floor, beneath a lace of rime, lay a giant's corpse, preserved by the chamber's freezing winds. Just under the frost giant's statue, a frost-coated morning star and the long-sleeping remnant of a cloud giant, more snow than what he once was. Strala took a step, and the frost breathed out a pale, teal shape. A ghost of the deceased giant. A voice lashed out. Ask your questions, and know the truth. It is a rare courtesy among the dead to offer truth or a message at all. Most prefer to slink back into the fugue, their path within the mortal closed forever, the tail placed upon his ears. Like many giants before them, Aigeron and his father, Blagothkus, came to the Eye of Anam seeking wisdom. The divine oracle told them that a great upheaval would upset the balance of power in the world, giving all giants the opportunity to win the respect of their gods and bring glory to their race. The oracle told Blagothkus outright that he could never impress the gods enough to earn their favor, then urged Aigeron to step out from beneath his father's dark shadow. Blagothkus was overcome with despair and envy. A terrible fight between father and son ensued, in which Blagothkus slew Aigeron. Blagothkus then retired to his castle to mourn. Strala, who knew grief, although retired of his memories, bowed. Then, Myrkul's cult. What had they sought within this holy house? I dispatched 2 undead who bore their mark upon their shoulders. 2 of your kin, undead giants of frost. They came for Chardalin, said Aigeron. They sought to harrow these halls, to force a storm giant laded within their carriages to bequeath his past will and rise to his feet as a puppet under their control. This body, and here the ghost looked down upon itself with a small, astonished pity. They could not move, my own. There is still a favour from the All-Father woven round me, I would assume. I am the messenger to travellers within these halls. Once the magic could not stick, they took the black gems from the treasury, then fled. At the word Chardalin, a shelf slid open in Strala's mind. During the age of Netheril, miners found something that would change their lives forever. The gems known as Chardalins. An arcanist known as Elorian examined the gems as the miners brought up the useless rocks to her. She was amazed at the degree of magic the stones seemed to possess. Before long, she realized that the gems could hold a single spell that was cast into them, later releasing the magic when the fragile gem was crushed. This discovery launched the Empire into an expedition frenzy that lasted more than 500 years. The discovery of the Chardalin gems caused many of the Netherese enclaves to intensify their efforts in mining the surrounding hills and mountains. Many of the archwizards believed even greater prizes awaited discovery. and they invested huge sums of money in an effort to be the first to find them. Aigeron's gaze softened. Take heed, rune-bearer. The stones within these halls remember. So do oaths of long-forgotten knights. If the dead god's flock hoards Chardalin, they mean to enact a great scheme upon these lands. I wouldn't tarry if you wish to regain your memories or find what they stole. The ghost bowed, with the morning star's shadow at his feet, and ebbed back into frost. The owl, who had been listening with the attention of a magistrate or a cat, clicked its beak once. I would guess that is owl for enough talk. So they departed the eye, Struller and his feathered tutor, down the causeway and into the frigid expanse once more. The question of where next often answers itself in the dale. The nearest trouble is your destination. Thus, Jotun's guide took him to Dugan's Hole, a village that currently embodied a lot of suspicion. Ho there, wanderer. Stay thy course a moment to indulge an old man over the sleepy little respite of the 10 towns. Dugan's Hole is the smallest and most insular of the 10 towns. Its residents aren't fond of visitors, and inbreeding has caused the population to dwindle in recent years. It also has given rise to often seen physical deformities, including, but not limited to, small misshapen ears and slightly pointed teeth. The town is a small cluster of dwellings perched on the edge of Redwaters that is too small to support any industry, not even scrimshaw. Ice has buckled the shorter of its 2 piers, rendering the dock unsafe. The longer pier has 2 icebound keelboats tethered to it, though they're immobile because the lake is frozen. Local fishers have hauled their smaller boats onto the shore and resorted to cutting holes in the ice to catch knucklehead trout, which they depend on for survival. Struller had an uneasy sense as he approached the innards of the town. A crowd knotted before the speaker's house, arguing with militia, a retinue of 50 in gold-laced harness, their livery a crown worked through white, red, and gold. Whispers slithered through the assembly. One of the disfigured elders stated ever so quietly to another, "That sword, that man is the one they were speaking to Edgra about." The rune knight heard those words just at the edge of his ear. The leader stepped out. "Ivar Vosk," he announced, and most of the crowd hushed as he began to speak. "By the order of Voss Anderton, and by complaint of the folk of Dugan's Hole, you," his chin flicked toward Struller, "stand accused of abetting attacks upon the 10 towns and trafficking with the agents of the dead god. Come with us and live to hear his explanation. Resist, and you will die." Here, I will note that when certain men offer you a choice in this fashion, they are merely announcing which chapter of their report they wish to write. Jotun measured them, the spacing of the pikes, the lazy overconfidence of the second rank, the way the owl had edged to the roofline and turned its head sideways. Owl speak for, "Do not be an idiot." He was a rune knight, yes, but he was also a man with a newly stitched arm and a town's worth of eyes upon him. He lifted his hands to indicate his acceptance. They bound him with dimensional shackles, took his sword, one item I know he wouldn't be pleased he was without, and set their column towards the eastway, snow squealing beneath their boots. The owl followed at a patient distance, because in the grand game of the gods, no scion of theirs leaves you, no matter the price, and this owl's loyalty or worth could not be balanced by a mortal's understanding. If you want my opinion, and you are reading this, so I shall risk presuming, you cannot arrest a past you do not know, nor bind a past that is still being understood or made within their own mind. But the world delights in watching an authority try. Chapter 3. Enrapture. The eastway opened before the retinue. North they went, the gold-laced company and their prize trudging past Good Mead, where a good brew is always taken, through Bryn Shander, the heart and mercantile hub of the 10 towns, skirting Targos, where a proud dwarf states, "The folks in Targos are as hard-headed as the trout in their lake. They'd rather stay shut up behind their walls than admit they need help from anyone. Stubborn and proud, the lot of them. Makes a dwarf feel right at home. Then threading Tourmaline, prettiest of the 10 towns. And at last, Lonelywood, where folks there mind their own business, and they expect you to do the same. Strala heard the guards trade 10 towns gossip the way gamblers trade odds. Each certain he alone had the god's ear, and learned perhaps important tales on the landscape he now found himself passing. Like the famous drow Dritz do Erden, many people who come to 10 towns are outcasts, fugitives or pariahs in search of a place where they can be tolerated, if not accepted. Some came here determined to make their fortunes. Others come for the solitude or to escape notice and stay out of the reach of the law of the southern cities. Today, 400 years after the formation of 10 towns, most folk are here because they were born here, grew up here, and expect to die here. They're fishers, loggers, miners, hunters, trappers, furriers, and traders, accustomed to the harsh climate, the slow pace, and the isolation. Like the hardy lichens and determined reindeer of the tundra, residents endure and do what's needed to survive. Icewind Dale has few trees, so lumber is cut from the slopes of the spine of the world or the depths of the Lonelywood forest. Stone from the hills and valleys surrounding Kelvin's Cairn supplements wood as a building material in 10 towns. Homes have sharply pitched roofs to prevent snow from accumulating on them. The people of 10 towns wear layers of woolen clothing, often topped off with fur cloaks. Under these heavy clothes and cloaks, one resident looks very much the same as another. Outdoors, it's hard to tell the people of 10 towns apart, and easy for clever monsters to hide in their midst. They came, wind-scoured and humorless, to a dock on the sea of moving ice. Skiffs rimed white, provisions stacked in neat military optimism. A dozen soldiers and their bound Rune Knight took to the boats and pulled east. And aside from an old man who can't wait to tell you of the sea of moving ice, along the western edge of Icewind Dale is a great expanse of broken ice that extends hundreds of miles out to sea. Narrow runs of open water riddle the ice, allowing passage for seafarers brave or daft enough to try navigating this frozen sea. Here, free-floating icebergs mingle with ice-covered rocks and islets, and the difference between one and the other is seldom apparent until tested by a ship's hull. The ice shifts constantly, opening new passages while closing others. Even the most seasoned captains can become undone when a broad waterway suddenly closes off and the jostling bergs grip their vessels like a vice. The numerous hulls of ruined ships trapped in the ice testify to the perils of sailing this sea. For all its desolation, the sea of moving ice does have some inhabitants. Seals, walruses, and polar bears hunt across its surface and in the waters beneath. Schools of cod and char swim in the deep, and occasionally whales breach among the bergs. White dragons, too, live and hunt here, and creatures that cannot escape into the water find little refuge from the terrifying aerial predators. Even a few tribes of hunters live here, stalking seals and bears for food and fashioning their shelters from blocks of ice. The Reged tribes of Icewind Dale are bound by an ancient taboo that prevents them from venturing out onto the sea of moving ice, or the floating land, as they call it. Though shrouded in language of superstition, the edict is ultimately practical, for the risks of travelling on the ice far outweigh the potential rewards. The short-lived tribe of the Seal, which emerged during the heyday of the tribes under Wulfgar's leadership, violated that edict, and the people of the tribes often point to that transgression as an explanation for why the tribe did not survive. Hours later, the fog grudgingly stepped aside and displayed its full majesty or dread, depending on if you were a prisoner or not. Revel's End. Revel's End is a panopticon, a prison configured in such a way that the activities of the prisoners can be closely monitored from a central location. Situated on the frigid, misty coast of the Sea of Moving Ice, The prison is a single-story structure topped with battlements. Rising from the core of the panopticon is a tower that holds the prison's administrative offices and guard barracks. Both the prison and the tower are carved out of a tall, blade-shaped rock that rises high above the sea cliffs. This rock, called the Windbreak, shields the tower against the brutal winds that sweep down from the Reged Glacier. One can approach Revel's End by land, sea, or air. A pier allows prisoners to be taken from ships up an elevator to the prison, and a mooring dock at the top of the tower allows prisoners to be delivered by airship as well. Revel's End is controlled by the Lord's Alliance, a loose confederation of settlements whose current members include the cities of Baldur's Gate, Mirabar, Neverwinter, Silvery Moon, Waterdeep, and Yartar, the towns of Amphail, Daggerford, and Longsaddle, and the dwarven stronghold of Mithril Hall. To be imprisoned in Revel's End, one must have committed a serious crime against one or more members of the Alliance and been sentenced to a lengthy period of incarceration, typically a year or more. Moreover, the offender must have political connections that make incarceration in another facility less dependable. Captured spies, for example, are often brought here to cool their heels. Inside, the Absolution Council sat in rotation, envoys from the Alliance's cities and steadfasts, seldom all present. Their warden sat with a meagred demeanour. The meeting room was austere by design, one long table, a chair on one side for the problem, our yet-to-be-determined protagonist or antagonist, 3 chairs on the other for the answer of his fate. Strala was brought in chained and set to face 3, Vos Anderton, Kriv Norixius, and Jill Torbo. They recited his ledger of crimes committed, undead raised, towns harrowed by his designs, Lord's Alliance soldiers cut down by a rune-edged sword that looked suspiciously like the one presently slumbering in their custody. Their voices had the steady tread of men and ladies who have already reached their conclusion and are now building a road back to it. Strala answered, "Lords, were I guilty, I might be before you in repentance. Yet I have no memory to confess with. I cannot recall the crime you require of me. I have seen several visions that I cannot make sense of. I agree. I saw myself in these visions. But with a memory incomplete, it may be prudent to gather a dream walker to make sense of these dreams. Tell me, nay, confer with my confusion." They countered with witnesses from Dugan's Hole. They had seen him strike. Him, with that blade, with intent. The Rune Knight, who had fought phantoms of his own making more than once now, ventured a wizard's explanation. A source of knowledge, he was unsure where it came from. "Lords, do you believe it could be a simulacrum? A magical skin is an old craft and trick in the north. Allow me this note. If a committee must choose between the existence of a clever spell and the convenience of a culprit, it will pick the shackles every time. Shackles are cheaper to explain in their reports." Before his words finished cooling in the air, something cold and intimate put its hand upon his mind. "Hush," it breathed. "Remain what you are, Darkling. You are a child of the Lord of the Dead, the marrow of decay." The voice was not loud. It had no need. He stood very straight and said nothing. And the 3 across the table noticed nothing. Men and ladies in such rooms rarely hear what does not flatter or insult them. Then the owl, faithful as a conscience, slipped through a high window and landed upon the sill just behind Jotun. The pressure ebbed, the whispers drew back into his mind, and then into the sudden clear space strode another presence entirely. A war god often needs no introduction. Tempest came as a tall man in battered plate, helm hiding his features, gaze a palpable weight. Not for the council. No, they remained mid-sentence, preserved in the amber of mortal time, but for Strala Jotun alone. "Fight these thoughts," said the Lord of Battles. voice like the drum and anvils of his warbound paladins. Redemption is a road walked through strife, not given freely. You will accept the decree of the three before you and make war upon what preys on the people of the 10 towns. A glorious battle will present itself. You will live for excess, for the thrill of the battle. You will embody honor, battle, and you will be my champion. You cannot mend what is done. You may choose what it makes of you. I return your thoughts to you. Your mind is yours. Remember, the nature of a thing matters. The form does not. The owl launched into the fog of Icewind Dale's peaks and vanished. Time lurched forward. You will be taken to the cells, Jill Torbo spoke, and the others nodded, having neatly arrived at a decision they believed wholly their own. The cell block was a hexagonal hub with observation slits and guards pretending not to be bored, the most dangerous sort. The cells themselves. Iron bunk bolted to stone. A thin mattress that was given only because it must, and did not offer much comfort in the very slightest. Finally, a bucket. For what I assume, listener, you have gathered its function. His cell already had a tenant. A grey-haired fellow perched in one corner, green eyes bright, which was odd as they seemed almost too green, which I admit is a strange thing to observe. But let us continue on. Gold-laced spectacles askew. A gold pendant turning in his fingers, speaking hushed riddles. Jotun, breaking into a chuckle that could have been sorrow or madness in disguise. I think it is best you decide that one. It is I, Theodorn. You remember me? No. Ah, but you must. Destiny fulfills itself on the 2nd or 4th attempt, I always say. You remember I became insane, with long intervals of horrible sanity. How preposterous, a crime of assisting you. Utter drivel. Words came out of him like pigeons from an opened loft within fanciful homes of Waterdeep. He had, he said, been helping Strala for years. Anti-magic fields, curse-cutting rites, any craft to still the urge toward death that shadowed him. And none of these had held. He mentioned to Jotun that a fortnight passed while they were trying to rid the curse, and he vanished, and shortly returned to Dugan's Hole with undead in his wake. The Alliance drove them off, and, in the way of frightened towns, blamed the nearest scholar. How could they blame one Theodorn La Violette? Now I've been stuck here for weeks. Can you believe it? Hence I Theodorn, who had tried to rid a curse of my dearest friend, now incarcerated. I, Elminster, have stood in that particular square on the board. The view is poor, and the company is definitely a lot poorer. Days wore on. Then came the guards, and Strala was walked once more to the table of answers. The three did not trouble themselves with doubt. Your sentence is Revel's End. We can find no law or answer that corroborates your tale. There's a tone bureaucrats practice in their washrooms for just such moments. Yet even as they spoke, Voss leaned to Kriv, a subtle whisper to another, and the emotion in the room changed. Strala Jotun, you stand accused of various treasons and murder, 1st degree and 2nd. Your sentence has already been determined. However, by decree of the gods, we have one errand, a suicidal errand, blessed by the gods, and parley for you if you survive. 3 months past, a Shardalin dragon, fused with the metal found in the dawn of Faerun, was used for malice, Duergar made, originally. Their intent was destruction, and this construct ravaged the 10 towns. Even though victory was ours, the remains of the dragon were never recovered. Stolen on their way to this very prison. 2 days ago came word. From a whisperer in Myrkul's cult we planted there several years past, they said, that the cult had seized the designs and meant to raise the weapon again, this time threaded with necromancy. That fear might swell the dead god's ambitions. Invisible enemies, said Voss Anderton, trying the phrase on his tongue like a vintage from Neverwinter's cellars. We've seen their boot prints in the snow. The Duergar have a mountain fastness. We have its location. Penetrate it, slay the warlord, destroy the engine. We will muster militia to wait for your signal, ready to fall upon the place when its iron and sorcery are opened. Will you do this for the good of 10 towns? One must admire the alliance. They will write the word absolution upon a document where the result is often predetermined and call it mercy, provided someone else holds the guilt. Strala remembered Tempest's iron words within a helm. I accept, he said, on a single condition. Their brows arched in a practiced unison, used to hearing prison's state conditions they never had the right to state. Théoden la Violette goes with me. He is a wizard of incredible intellect and has a thorough understanding of the dead god's designs and machinations. A pause. A tally of risks. The quiet calculation of 3 of the Lord's alliance, who have perhaps never loved a desperate friend. Agreed, Kriv Norixia said at last. A sending stone was pressed into the Rune Knight's palm, their leash and lifeline both. The militia would muster beyond the gates of the Duergar hold, waiting upon the moment runes and will opened what the iron and necromantic hordes had closed. Back in his cell, Strala weighed the stone in one hand and the absence of his sword in the other. The owl did not return just yet, which is the way of guides. They leave when you at last agree to walk your own path for a while. Théoden slept with his pendant in his fist, waiting for his release from what he had never become used to. A noble unaccustomed to such unpolite behavior. Enrapture, I call this chapter, for there is rapture in the battle to come. Enthrallment in the voice that would claim him. And there is the capture of a man by his own choosing, a way to regain his mind. And if the Sage of Shadowdale has any words of wisdom to a cleric of Tempest, I would state it as such. War is the whole truth that wishes to enrapture humanity. Peace is the whole falsehood that wants to capture humanity, but is never held. War begins in the soul and ends in the heart that feels their purpose complete, their voice heard. The nature of a thing matters. The mask it wears does not. And those masks, be they prisons, councils, dragons, or gods, were about to be tested by that truth. Chapter 4. Sunblight. They set out by dog sled. The owl, by the gods, luckily returned, and kept its slow, judicial spiral overhead as the trail bent south into the spine of the world. The fortress they sought did not trouble itself with any form of charm. For Sunblight sits hewn from the rock, all edges and ill will, past and present. Its stairs climbing to a featureless stone double door, 10 feet high, with an arrow slit watching all the approach its Chardalin-formed frame. The slit's watch appeared, saw Strala, and, 9, help me, bowed. Enter, avatar of the dead. When the wrong god thinks you're his, it makes for a lively afternoon and an even better tale. Give me a brief tick to regale you with perhaps a fable of the old god of the dead you may not have heard. The clergy of Myrkul were charged to make folk fear and respect death and the power of almighty Myrkul, so that no one stood against the church or tried to thwart its activities. Myrkul's priests were expected to spread the word that touching a priest of Myrkul brings death. They were expected to tell all folk that those in the service of Myrkul had perfect patience and could be trusted utterly, and then conduct themselves accordingly. Myrkulite clergy were to teach the stories of past and future doombringers, mortals who roamed the land avenging dead friends, masters, and bloodkin to whom they had sworn oaths, and slaying those who scoffed or who held other gods supreme over the Lord of Bones. Initiates to the faith first heard the word of Myrkul through a speak with dead spell cast upon a temple's most revered deceased former high priest. Such spells allowed all within hearing range to comprehend the corpse's words. Myrkul spoke through such vessels to say, Know me and fear me. My embrace is for all and is patient but sure. The dead can always find you. My hand is everywhere. There is no door I cannot pass, nor guardian who can withstand me. Myrkulites all addressed each other as Death or Most Holy Death for senior or elderly priests, adding the honorific before a known name or title, as in Death Williamson or Most Holy Death Trollslayer. Their titles, in ascending order of rank, were Daring 1, Novice, addressed formally by other Myrkulites as Daring Death X, where X is the novice's name. Nightwalker, Bone Talker, Shroud Wearer, Crypt Carver, Bone Dancer, Ritual Consecrator, Undead Master, Withering Lord, Deathbringer, and Elder Doom, a title used by all clergy who ascended in rank and influence beyond rule over a temple. All of these level titles described a duty or ritual of the faith that the priest assumed for the first time upon ascending to the named rank. For instance, Bone Dancers lead the Bone Dance ritual, a variant of Animate Dead, wherein guardian undead were conjured and placed around something to be guarded. Incense hung faint, rubies glittered in mortared nests around the gate. "Forbiddance," whispered Theodorn. Jotun glanced back. "What did you say?" "I speak of a spell, one that is hung over this fortress. We must remove it if we want your friends of the Alliance to assist us. I would most certainly not wish to be reawakened by this lot as a foul abomination. Let them think you've come to lift the spell, under Myrkul's will, and all that pious prattle. I'll do the dismantling of the spell, Strala, whose calm had often been mistaken for obedience more than once, persuaded the door wardens of the Lord of Bones that their so-called avatar required the ward dropped so holy folk might teleport in for a convocation, a message from their patron. If you are counting sins, mark down credulity among them. Theodorn traced the quiet mathematics of unbinding, and the fortress laid open for the Alliance. They were then conducted to a war room. 2 sets of double doors, braziers in the corners, a low stone table inked as a map. Bloodstains blotched the 10 towns upon the map. Dugan's hole was labelled thrice within a black smudge, where it perhaps had been circled more than once. Cartographers of cruelty do love their neat letters and plans, even if those plans result in their own demise. An elevator shaft took them down, a cage shuddering past a stone wheel. 40 yards to their left, a duergar writhed inside a cruel exoskeleton, his face a studied mask of pain. Dastardly, how could they conceivably do that to their own? A cruel jest. "Let us put an end to this," whispered La Violette in a mournful manner. Lower still, heat met them in slow, hammering pulses. A pyramidal forge, its peak shorn, its throat belching fire and heartbeats, ruled a warm cavern under smoke. A trench ran east, black anvils ranked like teeth in perfectible symmetry along it. Above their eyes, 4 towers held grey-skinned dwarves at their battlements, and between the forge mouth and those watching eyes lay a prize reconstructed to a new purpose. A Shardalin dragon, metal plates stitched from the old Netherese bewitched stone, oily wings, seemingly greased for its reawakening, and at its core a pulsing necromantic eldritch orb. Shardalin, since you will ask, stores spells for later use, which mayhaps seem not that useful until you realize that with an intelligent mind, you could give a group of your most unintelligent supplicants power they once could never attain. A lich presided, and near 100 undead bore a black dragon's carcass, knotted together in hemp rope, its durability and strength often used for ships and preferred within the Nalantha Isles. They laid it beside the construct. Black ichor crawled from corpse to the Chardalin dragon, guided by the magic of the various liches surrounding the ritual. The two fused, and the metal dragon hummed to life, or rather, undeath. In the corner sat an iron table with papers and diagrams, the self-incriminations of clever villains. Strahler set a hand upon the sending stone the Alliance had pressed upon him and whispered, "The ward was down, the defences soft. Bring steel and a hymn to your gods." A very, very brief aside, and I a word of wisdom. I would humbly state, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, and our 2 plot devices here most certainly achieved that metric. A half hour is a lifetime when doom is pending. From above the forge came rumblings and the clamour of battle. Within the forge, skeletal ranks moved into a symmetrical formation. Ghouls were placed at the forefront, hellhounds at the flanks. Then they saw it. White swords. Paladins in the Alliance screamed praise and leapt in reverence to their patrons. And the dragon pulled from its chains. Its breath now coughed radiance mixed with necromantic energy at the would-be aggressors. The air tore, and in it, vast and grinning, a flying human skull rolled its fire-bright eyes. An avatar to Myrkul. Strahler was locked mid-stride by divine forces. He wished to join the thrill of battle, to gain his release from his penance to the Lord's alliance. 2 voices reached for the levers inside him. One of velvet words, insisted of decay, one of the austere drum of battle. The vision formed now stricken by Myrkul's gifts. Crowd gathered in front of Jotun. Riches and bowing people at his feet. The vision changed. This time from the god of war himself. A brief pause on Tempus. Tempus, god of war and battles, is random in his favours, yet his chaotic nature favours all sides equally. Lord Tempus may be on an army's side on one day, and damn them the next. Such is the nature of a war. Tempus is prayed to most of all on the nights before battles, and regularly venerated by all warriors. As a result, he is a strong, exuberant, robust god, a warrior's god. Tempus sometimes appears at huge battles and important combats, and on rare occasions to individuals who are in a position to cause great strife by their decisions. Although mighty and profoundly honourable in battle, Tempus answers to his own warrior's code. He is quiet and solitary in relationship to other Firunian deities, pursuing no long-lasting alliances. His diametric opposite in portfolio, Eldath, he considers naive and weak. However, out of respect for her convictions, he punishes those of his faithful who abuse her priests, shrines, or temples. Perhaps he feels that war has little meaning without peace to define and highlight it. A mural of wars, unending now, formed as a vision within Strahler's mind. Neither saint nor butcher, but a craftsman of endless conflict, honoured by those who survived him or stood up to him in battle. And then, bright as dawnlight, his brother, a Red Knight's tactician and paladin of Tempus within Luskan, fallen in 1376 DR under mercenary banners, Lord Brambleberry's coin and Dudamont's armies crossing like ill stars. 2 names he now remembered from Waterdeep's history. The old Red Knight embodied the battle of ages past, a true reflection of rising anew. His dead brother turned to face him, almost ethereal and right within his sight. Embrace the honour of battle, and the legends will remember our names. The owl scythed once through the smoke and was gone. The helm within Strahler's mind inclined. Choose. The runes along his sword bloomed awake, one by one, then all together, as if the old Yarlmoot had stood and shouted, "Now!" He moved in haste towards the undead. The fire rune awakened first. Shackles of ember sprang from the etchings, bit the ankles of a charging knot of dead, and burned them where they stood. The giant smith's gift to those who forget fear and embrace the art of the forge. A finger of death lanced from a lich, cold law aiming for his left shoulder. But the storm rune turned Strahler's eyes prophetic. He watched the arcs before they existed, stepped between futures, and the spell hissed past with the petulance of an insult unanswered. The Theodorn you underestimate is probably the pompous old fool you believe he is, and that would be a mistake if he has turned your foe. He loosed a lightning bolt kept too long in a scholar's cupboard. It caught a lich, leaving dust upon the forge's candlelit tiles. The battle was turning for the militia, and they could feel it, with trumpeters humming towards victory. Theodorn and over 50 militia met the dragon in what appeared to be a dance. Each footstep or strike had a counter-argument. Over time, more and more militia arrived in the forge, and the necromantic dragon, while killing countless heroes of the Lord's Alliance, was finally struck down. While this was occurring, spells hammered Strala. Necromantic spells raising the dead. Spells such as Dance Macabre rose the dead faster than Jotun could dispatch them. But as he was losing his momentum, the frost rune thickened him with the stubbornness of battles never finished. And he went on, raging like a man who declines to not be a legend. The cloud rune took a baleful blast, a force of ribbons of negative energy meant for his heart, and redirected its magic. It slewed away to smash 4 liches harrying a paladin line, and their surprise was almost as good as their disintegration. A fine hit. The hill rune lent him the earth spring within Spring's first say. He leapt, now with the strength of an ancient warrior of Ostoria, and came down upon the skull, the avatar of Myrkul, with every sigil flaring, stone and storm, fire and frost, cloud and hill, all forming a painting he had woven together in true perfectible means. The avatar of Myrkul broke apart in elemental fury, its lights guttering into a darkness. Around them, undeath unraveled. The dragon screamed to a halt, its carcass looked over by many of the artisans and artificers now present. Paladins of Tempus and Lathander waded bright through the dim light of the forge, rounded their dead kin, kneeling and praying for safe passage through the fugue. And then there was silence, which in the north is the only honest applause of a job well done. In that hush, helms turned and found Strala. Steel rang on steel, swords on shields as hundreds of hands made a hail of it, and voices lifted, not in the Alliance's traders' common, but in a giant's old tongue, rough and right. Praise be the hero of Tempus, mighty foehammer. Lend me strength as I wage the righteous war. In the name of Tempus, Lord of battles, we die honourably in the holy fire. It was not perhaps the finest poetry of Waterdeep's North Ward, but it fit the room and the blood upon the floor. I would like to tell you that Myrkul withdrew forever, stung in vanity, that Shardalin went quietly back to being a rumour within the 10 towns, that Sunblight sighed, apologised for the inconvenience, and became a library of 2 great conflicts. Yet the world of the Sword Coasts persists in refusing my edits. What I can tell you is this. Strala Jotun knelt, not to the Alliance and not to victory, but to the choice he had made and would make again. He is a rune knight, which means he has signed his name to old sentences of a forever war, a battle long, hard, and never fully complete. But tonight, he wrote one of his own in the annals of the North. The owl returned at last and settled on the broken rim of the skull, head canted as if approving a student's work. In the night air outside of the fortress, the aurora stitched its green seam across the sky. The dale still would not dawn as frequently as it once did before the spell plague, but there was a grim solace complete on this evening. Chapter 5. 20 Stones. Weeks went by in the way the dale measures them. 10 days at a count. Oral's twilight still stitched the sky shut. The aurora continued and kept its shuttered vigil. On the southwest edge of Dugan's Hole, there stood a ring the locals pretended not to fret over. The 20 stones of Thrun, 19 granite menhirs in a rough triangle, and one in the centre watching the rest like a schoolmaster. The town will tell you, with a shrug practiced over generations, that the stones were there when Dugan du Brace first set his lines in Redwaters. Scholars, bless their souls, have chased Thrun through story and song and found only hints, a name tied to northern legends, sometimes a god, sometimes an elemental unruliness hammered under druidic lore. There Strala Jotun sat, sword across his knees, carving runes with a slow patience, the fire rune inlaid with sparks of ember, ice etched into the frost rune, shocking grasp to elevate the storm rune, finally the cloud rune, levitate magic cast into the sword to entomb the weave in the sword for further use. Finally a new rune was etched in, the Pharaoh rune, rune of journeys complete. Theodorn kept him company, producing a pipe from his pocket and blue rings that drifted up, acquiescing into a circular tunnel and a carriage moving through. And then there was a 21st stone. Upon that new face, freshly hewn, ran a line of old Jotun. Look upon this stone and hear Strala's telling. Once a prophet of the Bone Lord, made now a paragon of battle, to Tempest's never-ending nature of battle and endurance. In Icewind's hush and wilderness, take your strength. Fight one more fight. Shun the shortcuts that call themselves wisdom. It is the nature of a thing that matters. Never its mask, never its before, never its after. From town came the crier. Lungs and alarm both healthy. Remohaz have been spotted along the east way. Caravans undone and overturned. Will any adventurer heed my call? For the unlettered, a Remohaz is a centipede the size of a cottage that keeps a forge of magma inside its belly. And did I mention an ice-melting temper? If you must meet one, do it with friends who run faster than you, or with a rune knight who does not run at all and stands steady in the face of danger. Strala and Theodorn exchanged a sort of laugh. The stone had said it plain. One more fight, and together they rose. The sword found Strala's hand as if it had been waiting there for a 10-day, and the pipe found Theodorn's pocket once more. Shall we? Asked the scholar, squinting up at the owl. We shall. In the name of Tempest, Lord of Battles, it will die honourably in righteous fire. Mighty Foehammer, lend me your strength as I wage your righteous war, forever into legend.